I've been called as a pastor to help shepherd God's flock, but there's one greater than us all who oversees us all. I truly hope that this timely message encourages you today. Hi, I'm Pastor Mike with Lighthouse Christian Church. We're so glad you joined us today, and we've got a special treat today. Our worship pastor, Basilio Ramirez, is going to lead us in some worship. So we hope that you can sing along and worship the Lord from home. Well, Well, thank you for joining us in worship today, and thank you to our worship pastor, Basilio, for leading us in worship. We hope that you're able to still stay connected with the Lord, and thank you for staying connected with us as well for a time of worship. We sure do miss seeing you in person, but we're going to be really excited when we all get back together again soon. In the meantime, stay well and stay healthy, and continue to join us in your own home worship each week, so that you can keep that connectedness with God that's so important. We enjoyed worship with a few friends last Sunday, and it was really special. And don't forget to support your church through the next few weeks through your weekly tithes and offerings, which can be sent online or through our website or by text, or you can mail it in or even bring it in. Offerings last week were over $10,000 short of what we need. So we really need and appreciate your prayers and support, and we thank you for that. One of our members sent me this, a reminder that tithing is not canceled, even if public services are for now, a sign of the times. Speaking of signs of the times, this is on our church sign, reminding us that we can still read the Word, pray, worship at home, tune into weekly messages on our website, and help each other. So if you know someone who might be alone and in need of a phone call or getting help getting needed supplies, reach out to them this week. Our staff is calling everyone that we know about that's a shut-in in the hospital or a care facility or at home for health reasons. Let's all try to give love and encouragement to one another during this time. And now for today's message. How do you picture Jesus? When you think of Jesus, what image comes into mind? I would invite you to pause this message in a moment and consider that with whoever you might be with, and share the primary image that you have of Jesus when you think about him, and then we'll continue. Well, we're in a series of messages where we're seeking to rediscover Jesus, because Jesus made some revealing claims about who he is and why he came in the Gospel of John, like being the bread of life, the light of the world, the gate. Today we will see him as the Good Shepherd. There is no better loved image of Jesus than as the Good Shepherd. This has captured the heart of believers and artists for 2,000 years. In fact, the Good Shepherd is the most common representation of Christ found in the early Christian art in the catacombs of Rome, before Christian images could be made public. Here are some classic images to spark your imagination. This is the Good Shepherd, a marble statue from the early 4th century, now on display in the catacombs of Rome. This is the Good Shepherd painting by the 19th century German artist Bernard Plockhorst that depicts Jesus as a shepherd leading his sheep, tenderly carrying a little lamb. And this dramatic scene is called The Lost Sheep by 19th century British artist Alfred Sword, recalling the parable of the lost sheep, whose shepherd would go to any length to rescue it. And this 20th century stained glass artwork is from an Anglican church in Australia. Again, it represents Jesus with a shepherd's staff carrying a little lamb. And that lamb is us. How we need him right now to shepherd us and carry us through difficult times. So why is Jesus called the Good Shepherd? Why does he call himself that? Well, it's in contrast to all the bad shepherds that Israel had suffered over many centuries, from bad prophets to corrupt priests to wicked kings. In Ezekiel 34, which I encourage you to read on your own, God scolds the shepherds of Israel for not properly caring for his flock. And then in verse 11 and 12 in Ezekiel 34, God says, "This is what the sovereign Lord says. I myself will search for my sheep and look after them. As a shepherd looks after his scattered flock when he is with them, so will I look after my sheep. I will rescue them from all the places where they were scattered on a day of clouds and darkness." And in verse 15 and 16, God says, I myself will tend my sheep and have them lie down, says the sovereign Lord. I will search for the lost and bring back the strays. I will bind up the injured and strengthen the weak. But the sleek and strong I will destroy. I will shepherd the flock with justice. So now Jesus tells us that he is that good shepherd that God had promised. So what does a good shepherd do? Let's turn in our Bibles to our text for today, to John chapter 10. The Gospel of John chapter 10, starting in verse 11. And as you're turning to that, we've been noticing each week the importance for Jesus' teaching of looking at the context. That is, what happens right before or right after he teaches these lessons. This one today follows immediately after last week's teaching that he is the gate. Calling himself the gate, and now today calling himself the Good Shepherd, is Jesus' commentary on the Jewish leaders who had just excommunicated a blind man that Jesus had healed on the Sabbath. To these bad shepherds, Jesus declares, I am the Good Shepherd. And then he tells us why, as we read in John chapter 10, verse 11 and following. I am the Good Shepherd. The Good Shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep. So when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. The man runs away because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. Now, we want to notice today three important lessons from this passage and the verses that follow. First, the Good Shepherd lays down his life for the sheep, as opposed to the hired hand, because the sheep do not belong to him. So the hireling abandons them. But not Jesus. He promises to never leave us nor forsake us. The hired hand leaves them to the wolf, the enemy who attacks and scatters the flock. But not Jesus. He protects and defends his sheep against our enemies. And the hired hand, he says, cares nothing for the sheep, but not Jesus. He cares for each one of us personally. It was the responsibility of shepherds to lead, feed, care for, rescue, and defend their sheep. Shepherds back then had hard lives. After 20 years of serving as a shepherd, Jacob complained to his father-in-law in Genesis 31, verse 40, the heat consumed me in the daytime and the cold at night, and sleep fled from my eyes. In other words, he wasn't getting much rest. Shepherds also led dangerous lives. The shepherd boy David told Saul, your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. And when a lion or a bear came and carried off sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. And then, of course, if any sheep went missing, well, the shepherd had to pay for them himself out of his own pocket. But no greater care could one show than to not only risk their own life, but to give their life for another. Not long after he gave this teaching, Jesus said, greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. And that is what our Good Shepherd did for us. He laid down his life for us. John later wrote, this is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us. That's what a good shepherd does. He lays down his life for his sheep. Second, the good shepherd knows his sheep, and they know him. In verse 14 and 15 it says, I am the good shepherd, Jesus says again. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. You see, a shepherd and a sheep develop a close relationship with one another in real life. Shepherds often name their sheep like pets, and the sheep will follow no other voice than the voice of their shepherd. Jesus tells those who reject him later in this chapter, but you do not believe because you are not my sheep. My sheep listen to my voice. I know them, and they follow me. Do you want to see how? Watch this. A man who was traveling in the east heard that there was a shepherd who still kept up the custom of calling his sheep by name. He went to the man and said, "Let me put on your clothes and take your crook, and I will call them and see if they'll come to me." And so he did. And when he called one of those sheep by name, the whole flock ran away from him. Then he said to the shepherd, "Will none of them follow me when I call them?" The shepherd said, "Yes, sir, some of them will. The sick sheep will follow anybody." That's a sobering thought. May we only follow our shepherd's voice. Some of our favorite songs are about this close relationship that we enjoy with our good shepherd. So now we invite you to sing along as our worship pastor leads us in a couple of those favorite songs.
Sins and griefs to bear. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer. Oh, what peace we often forfeit. Oh, what needless pain we bear. All because we do not carry everything to God in prayer. Have we trials and temptations? Is there trouble anywhere? We should never be discouraged. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Can we find a friend so faithful, who with all our sorrows share? Jesus knows our every weakness. Take it to the Lord in prayer. I have a maker. He formed my heart before even time began. My life was in His hand. He knows my name. He knows my every thought. He sees each tear that falls and hears me when I call. I have a Father. He calls me His own. He'll never answers me when I call.
Yes, we have a shepherd who knows us well and who wants us to know him personally. He is a caring and good shepherd, even through challenging times, who never leaves us alone. Our third lesson for today is that the good shepherd gathers all his sheep together. In verse 16, Jesus says, I have other sheep that are not of this sheep pen. I must bring them also. They too will listen to my voice, and there shall be one flock and one shepherd. Now, who is he talking about when he says, I have sheep of another pen? Well, let's talk about that for a moment and observe what we can see. The good shepherd unites his sheep. He brings them all together. So when he says he has other sheep not of this fold, who is he talking about? Well, he's not talking about aliens like someone claimed back in the 70s. Let's start by determining what Jesus means when he says the ones he does have now in this sheep pen. God had been the shepherd of his people, the Israelites, for 2,000 years by Jesus' day. Jacob called him the God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked faithfully, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day. And of course, King David declared, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Psalm 80 calls out, hear us, shepherd of Israel, you who lead Joseph like a flock. Psalm 100 declares, it is he who made us and we are his. We are his people, the sheep of his pasture. And Isaiah said he tends his flock like a shepherd. He gathers the lambs in his arms and he carries them close to his heart. God had been Israel's shepherd for all those years. And by calling himself the good shepherd, Jesus is equating himself with God. This is why we need to rediscover just who Jesus really is. Think back to his entrance in Bethlehem. Of all the people on the planet, to whom did God first announce the birth of his son on earth? It was to shepherds. He seems to have an affinity for them. And why did Jesus come into our world? He tells us himself in Luke 19:10, for the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost, like a good shepherd. When people misunderstood why he welcomed the tax collectors and the sinners, he told stories like the parable of the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the lost son. In the parable of the lost sheep, the shepherd leaves 99 of his flock to find one lost sheep. And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and he returns home. In each of these stories, when that which was lost is found, there is great rejoicing and celebration. Jesus says, in the same way I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. Do you know who that includes? You and me. Our good shepherd seeks us when we are lost, and heaven rejoices over us when we are found. Watch this clip for how a good shepherd goes after even one lost sheep to bring it home.
A lost soul is helpless. And therefore, the only hope that a lost soul has to live is if its shepherd will seek it out, find it, and rescue it. Ezekiel chapter 34, God says, "My sheep have become food for all the wild animals, since there was no shepherd. I myself will be the shepherd of my sheep. I will seek the lost and bring back the strayed." In fulfillment of this, Jesus said of himself, "For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost." Whoever hears my word and believes has crossed over from death to life.
I'd like you to pause for a moment and reflect on the day that you accepted Jesus Christ as your Savior, if you have done that, and the joy that you felt that day, and now the realization that all of heaven rejoiced over you and your salvation. I'd like us to pause and share that joyful experience of salvation with those who might be with you right now. I'll bet there were some good stories. So who are these other sheep that Jesus wanted to gather? We've got that the ones in the pen are the Israelites, but who are the others? Well, they're the Gentiles. They're the rest of the world. He means you and me. Jesus says in verse 16, "I must bring them also. They too will listen to my voice, and there shall be one flock and one shepherd." One of the good shepherd's purposes in coming was to bring together all of the world's diverse and divided people into one flock with one shepherd. The one flock is the church, and the one shepherd is Jesus Christ. Jesus prayed for this before he left this earth in John 17 when he said, "I pray also for those who will believe in me through their message, that all of them may be one, Father, just as you are in me and I am in you, so that they may be brought to complete unity. Then the world will know that you sent me and have loved them, even as you have loved me." Now, this idea of uniting Jews and Gentiles together was radical and new at the time, but it began to be fulfilled in just 6 short months. At the beginning of the church at Pentecost, when people from all over the world had gathered together to hear the good news of Jesus for the first time, and then they took it home with them. And it's continued to spread around the globe for 2,000 years now, reaching more people from more places than at any time in human history. People from virtually every nation and tribe and language now believe in Jesus and are part of one great flock with one good shepherd. And what has brought us all together as one? The death of our shepherd. One thing we all have in common is he died for us. This is so significant that Jesus states that he lays down his life for the sheep, meaning he dies for us 5 times in this brief passage today. This is a core belief of our faith, that Jesus died for us to save us. It is the meaning behind another key symbol, the cross that's behind me today on the wall. And it's the reason that we remember him regularly through the bread and the cup of communion, which I encourage you to share together at home until we can meet together again. Now look at what it means for Jesus to be laying down his life for us. It proves that Jesus is the good shepherd who lays down his life for the sheep. It shows his personal relationship with his sheep. It unites all his sheep all over the world into one flock with one shepherd. It is a reason, he says, that his Father loves him. Now in verse 17, the reason my Father loves me, Jesus says, is that I lay down my life, only to take it up again. Laying down his life for us is voluntary. No one takes his life against his will. Jesus says so in verse 18. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord, and I have authority to lay it down and authority to take it up again. This command, he says, I received from my Father. This means that neither Judas Iscariot, nor the Jewish leaders, nor the Romans, neither Satan himself could kill Jesus Christ, the eternal Son of God and the co-creator of the universe, unless he allowed them to. Why, he could have called 10,000 angels to rescue him at any time from his arrest through his crucifixion. But that's how much our shepherd loves his sheep. He voluntarily allowed himself to be arrested, allowed himself to be tried and beaten, allowed himself to be sacrificed that we might be saved. Isaiah 53 foretold it. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed. Yes, Jesus' death was voluntary. For even when he died, he yelled, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." And then he breathed his last. But laying down his life for us was just a prelude to taking it up again, meaning that he would not stay in the grave, but he would rise from the dead, which is a fact we shall celebrate soon at Easter time. And it also showed authority that Jesus had from the Father. The Son's death, burial, and resurrection were not an accident, but were his Father's plan from the very beginning in order to save you and I. Because like sheep, we stray. We all, like sheep, have gone astray. Each of us has turned to his own way. But our good shepherd seeks us out, for the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. He does this so that we will return to him. For you were like sheep going astray, but now you've returned to the shepherd and overseer of your souls. After Jesus gave this great teaching of being our good shepherd, John records that the response to Jesus was divided. In verse 19 and following, we read, "The Jews who heard these words were again divided. Many of them said, 'He's demon-possessed and raving mad. Why listen to him?' But others said, 'These are not the sayings of a man possessed by a demon. Can a demon open the eyes of the blind?'" Some think that Jesus is deluded and not worth listening to. And unfortunately, that would include about 5 billion souls, 2/3 of the world's population, including many people that you know. But some people think that Jesus' teaching and miracles make him worthy of consideration as our good shepherd. What do you think of Jesus? Who are you, Jesus? I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. I'd like to close this message today in prayer by reciting together the 23rd Psalm, also known as the Shepherd's Psalm. Would you and anyone that might be with you join me in saying this together as our prayer today to our Good Shepherd? Psalm 23, a Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen to that. A Sunday school teacher decided to have her class of children memorize the 23rd Psalm. She gave them a whole month to learn the verse. One little boy was excited about the assignment, but he just couldn't memorize the words. After much practice, he could barely get past the first line. On the day that the children were scheduled to recite the 23rd Psalm in front of the whole congregation, the little boy was very nervous. When it was his turn, he stepped up to the microphone and he said proudly, "The Lord is my shepherd, and that's all I need to know." If you think about it, that's all we really need to know, no matter what's going on around us. So trust in Jesus as your shepherd. And don't be afraid, no matter what's going on around you, no matter what valley you're walking through, for he has promised to go with us, leading us, feeding us, and restoring our soul. Please think about what we've talked about here today, and feel free to discuss it if you're with others around you. What does it mean to you that Jesus is the Good Shepherd? And if you'd like to accept Jesus as your shepherd, then pause and pray and ask Jesus into your heart. Invite him into your life. Then plan to come soon and confess your faith here at Lighthouse or another Bible-believing church and be baptized. We invite you to come join his flock here at Lighthouse or recommit your life to him as the shepherd of your soul. Your good shepherd awaits, and he's calling all his sheep to come home. Please contact us if you'd like to know more, and we would be happy to talk with you about your next steps. And if you have a prayer request or a special need, then email or call our church office, and we will have our pastors, our staff, and our whole prayer team pray for you. Thanks for joining us today. Tune in again next week to discover more about Jesus for your life. Stay safe, stay well, and may the Good Shepherd guide you and keep you.